Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. I'm absolutely delighted to start the series of the podcast, Vina Talks ND Life, that we do exclusively for GAIN, the group for autism, insurance, investment, and neurodiversity, with an absolute delightful personality and a personal friend who's Alex Langridge of Savannah Group. And Alex and I today have got a few little announcements to sort of share with you, and certainly a lot more to speak about with regard to neurodiversity. But without further ado, Alex, the floor is yours. Would you please like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Vina. And so I am, 19 years boy and man and executive search consultant, focusing on the intersection of, technology, digital, and financial services. Clearly, a huge amount of that has been, in the, insurance, and also, in the investment space. My association with GAIN goes back several years to kindly being, introduced, to Laurie, Vic, and Vina. This was pre-launch, and I think I have seen GAIN go from strength to strength in the way that it has, both gained new members, strengthened its propositions, and is more relevant, to its clients, and its individual members.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks also for your support all this time. It's very important for us. We always say at GAIN to make sure that we're connected with the ecosystem, so that people who are working in the industry, and indeed the people who would like to join our industry, get to understand all the different sort of moving parts occasionally that make up all this glory that's known to be the insurance industry. But of course, as you very nicely said, the tech side, the insurtech, fintech, and beyond insurance, or indeed the fintech or insurtech elements of it, or indeed the disturbance. We have all the different sort of compartments in the wider financial services industry that span from banking to investment, and from investment into asset management, etc., etc. Shall we hit the ground running by making a little announcement with regard to the little community, little but very bold, and definitely sort of a much promising community that we've put together?
Look, absolutely. In very early last year, GAIN, kindly appointed me an ambassador. The first one, I think I was the guinea pig. They knew I'd be resilient enough to know that they could try out all sorts of things with me. And I think given what I do, is a lot of interaction with HR leaders, and thinking about the future of work, thinking about the future workforce planning, clearly undertaking key executive hires. It became clear to me that there was a great opportunity for GAIN to become far closer to the HR leadership community. And together, Vina and I have been working together for a number of months, putting together a community that will have its inaugural meeting in March.
True. And it's incredible that, again, I feel, and let's start with the very sort of raw, typical, unfiltered, and very direct, and therefore unprepared sort of discussion that we usually have in this podcast series. In me sort of provoking some thoughts, for starters, in my 25 years in the space, I've seen very little tangible contribution by HR, not because they lack the wish to make this contribution, but really because often enough, I find, and this is according to my own experiences and observations, they're not called in, they're not invited, they're not wholeheartedly invited to be party to this workplace transformation, to the elements that we really need to empower our people and make them accountable, in order to really, therefore, rely on them to take us to the next sort of, day, to the future. And I feel that putting together a community rather than just another advisory group, a community that people feel that they are part of their peers, they're part of a team that's expecting quite a lot of itself, and is expecting also to be at the driving helm of all these transitions and all these changes that we're now more and more, be it because of AI and the future of work, be it also because more of us nowadays want to include cognitive diversity in the agenda, in the way that we recruit and utilize and really develop people.
there's a number of things to pick up from that observation. Certainly, ever since COVID, I think we've seen a real upgrading of the place of HR leaders within insurers. They truly earned their seat at the top of the table. Kept businesses running, kept workforces resilient during this time. And secondly, what I've noticed in my conversations starting to build this community is there's been a groundswell of enthusiasm to learn more, to share openly, a real deep curiosity about this agenda and what it means. And so thirdly, we have to look on the insurance industry that is not yet in revolution. It is seeing a lot of evolution in business models, driven by regulation and Lloyd's Blueprint 2 and similar. Plus the fact that there are other regulations coming in, like stress tests, and that is leading to insurers having to build forward-thinking analytics capabilities distinct from the actuarial teams that have been the mainstay and underpinning the industry. And when you have new skills and you're looking for new places to go, often new thinking and different thinking can be is something that the neurodivergent community is very, very capable of offering.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, before we go very much deeper into the neurodiverse side of things, which is of course the thread that underpins the whole series of the podcast, I'd like to sort of dwell on, because you inspired me right now, and much as we've had many discussions with each other, haven't we, as we are coming to bring together this amazing group of people. The first time that we're speaking about the COVID impact. And I know it's been nicely sort of covered, sometimes dramatically covered, sometimes disappointingly so. But one thing is the fact, and I really agree with you, although I had not driven myself to this kind of conclusion before. What you said, that during the COVID time, HR kept the industry going. I love it. I completely agree. You know what? I have been saying hit by the realization that perhaps, just saying perhaps, and I could be awfully wrong, there's many things in life, some HR professionals haven't had this degree of, and you said enthusiasm, the degree of happiness, the degree of, I'm here and I'm doing something, rather than perhaps policing, the policies of an organization, perhaps making sure that the C-level doesn't get to be seen in the front page of a magazine, an industry magazine, a sector magazine, or indeed a national newspaper for having done something wrong. But after COVID, or during indeed COVID, that many people were just suffering. We were suffering. We didn't know what the new norm is. And as humans, obviously the human species, we need time to acclimatize ourselves, to familiarize ourselves with the so-called new norm. There was a HR department that was really looking after all these people, who was receiving the requests from better to use at home chairs to really navigating the system of setting little mementos to thank people for their input, to sort of say to them, you're not forgotten, we acknowledge you, we know who you are, we know you're there, and you're basically suffering, sometimes in your own small flat, perhaps, that doesn't have the benefit of a garden or whatever. And I'll stop the long-winded sort of conversation to say that really, for many people, this is now a newly found enthusiasm. And I find that the timing could not be better when you try to combine this enthusiasm with purpose. And I think a community through this HR advisory provides the latter, that purpose, quite handsomely, quite generously.
No, the whole, to your earlier point about not being another advisory board, or dare I say, even a committee, the values we wish to infuse it with, are ones of mutual sharing, of mutual respect, of learning and appreciation that we have organizations that are joining this, who are at very different stages in their growth. They have achieved different things. Some are right at the very beginning. Others have laid out and created apprenticeship schemes for neurodiverse graduates, and have very well-fledged, fleshed out policies, practices, some very good ways of ensuring that neurodivergent people are equitably treated when it comes to both the recruitment and the onboarding process. So we know that we are an industry in flux. We know that we're an industry with a lot more to do in this, but the desire is very, very much there at the top end.
Point about sharing. Often enough, and now a little bit of an apology to the rest of the sector. Let's talk more about insurance, because insurance deserves a little bit of more attention and love, and sometimes critique. So the critique about the insurance industry, that we're not the best when it comes to sharing. Often enough, we don't share because we're thinking, given that we are the industry of risk assessment, and obviously quite a lot goes in the know-how and the IP of this kind of risk, as you said, analytics. We're not very good at sharing outside our own organization. And of course, because what we're speaking about is ultimately a universal design kind of issue. It's not just about the neurodivergent sort of X, Y, and Z colleague of ours. It's about people who want to be understood and accepted for their individualistic sort of ways, for being different than the others. And again, we can speak scientifically as much as we want, different DNA sort of composition, and that's good enough. It's all different to everybody. But how can you create this universal design if, as an industry, we don't work collectively? And that is the beauty of this community. We've invited, and it's an invitation only, not to really make it elitist or not to exclude others, but essentially we wanted to instill a sense of purpose and a sense of accountability, whereby people really at the helm of the HR departments of their own organizations within our sector get to feel the need to exercise the newly found enthusiasm as well as purpose into some things that need to really be implemented in order to close the say-do gap. So we need to go slightly over and above the raising awareness into stipulating the necessary action taken for people, organizations, leaders therein, in those sort of offices, in these employers, to take the necessary decisions that take everybody, uplift everybody to a better, more sustainable future. And sharing is very important. And you said also very well, not everybody's going to be on the same stage of the journey. And you know what? It does not matter. You can be in any stage of the journey you wish, so long as you're there, prepared to share. Not everything works. We'd like to know what hasn't worked. We'd like to know the failures. And we certainly want to take forward the good practices, to make them better, and collectively to create the best practice scenario, which we all admit we're not there yet. And that's fine, because progress wouldn't happen if we were there.
Look, I mean, I think, this, that point about, candor and honesty, underpin the fact that we wish to, make this, we've set this up on a, Chatham House rule basis, and at the same time, there is this, as you rightly said, Vina, as this, there is, there's desire to somewhat break the mold that previously there were for not around the neurodiverse agenda in insurance, that gradually dissipated over years when sort of firms commercial rivalries took over, and ultimately as a sector-wide initiative, it's just so highly commendable. I mean, the more and more you look into, underemployment and unemployment levels of neurodiverse people, many highly intelligent, many with degrees, and a good subset of those with some relevant intellectual training to insurance, in the UK, there is there is no shortage of talent to go around.
Yeah, yeah, and yet there is shortage of talent. So here's an oxymoron already, a very antithetical kind of positioning, depending on how much of a conversion rate individually, the hiring body, the agent, be it in-house, be it an external sort of, hiring expert, or being the anticipation, the expectations of the environment when it comes to hiring are positioned in. What I mean with that, we're speaking about the war for talent. We're speaking about, the attrition, that certain people, leave certain high in demand, but of course, handsomely remunerating industries, something that's a little bit more humane, as we often say, something that allows you to earn less. Hopefully, that wouldn't be quite a privilege, but you do earn less. But ultimately, you have a higher, I suppose, standard of living, because more money comes with more responsibilities, typically, and more stress. And obviously, given that certain people have been party, more witness to the fact that we tend to recruit people who look like us or behave like us. And that's the way and the pattern that we've ended up ourselves with now. The next sort of chance of, say, not particularly exciting statements, such as we have a very much of a shortage of talent in our industry. How did that happen? Quelle surprise. Oh my God, what have we done wrong? Well, we've been recruiting wrongly. We've been recruiting from a much limited stack of people without acknowledging exactly what you said, that people might look different, people might behave different, might communicate differently, but that does not lessen their ability to be a very creative, credible sort of, party to the success of X organization, or indeed to Y industry. And this is what we're trying to sort of break down. We're trying to break down the silos of the lack of adequate appreciation of what constitutes a capable set of skills. Capable set of skills might have different articulation about it, but at the end delivery, so long as it gives you the amount of results, the output that you expect, is not dependent on the how it gets there. And there's definitely much more than just one how, one method to sort of achieve the end output. And I think that's a big learning for us, hasn't it been? I mean, and by the way, perhaps in your answer, I love what you've been doing, which is sort of adding another sort of set of values on which we're building this advisory. So keep on doing that.
Thank you, thank you, Vina. And it's a on one end of the spectrum, we have a set of companies that are hugely successful, that many countries in the world would like to have, for the presence, the prestige, the tax base, the ability to be cornerstone parts of a very valuable insurance ecosystem and world. And those have worked in a very similar way for a very long time. And we are just seeing the first wave of disruption, of whether positive, whether negative, that's your values, and simultaneously you're starting to see some the first washer models in some cases wash away, in other cases become very successful. Certainly the desire and the need of the insurance industry to put new and different type of product out there has only multiplied, whether it be cyber, whether it be other insurance gaps, whether it's distributing through platforms and embedded insurance, or the enormous amounts of capital needed for ESG and ensuring the transition gap. And so these are going to require new ways of thinking. These are, new products, and ultimately, the industry needs to keep on innovating to, as it's, to maintain its proud role as being the backbone, of a resilient society.
Beautiful, beautifully said, beautifully put, and I love how you managed to sort of weave the necessary capital, new products, and you went obviously to the newly found transactional commodity risk, cyber. I mean, remembering some 10, 15 years ago, cyber risk was treated with caution, and obviously, meanwhile, it's just as commercialized as property. But no apologies to either side. It's not really said in any sort of negative way whatsoever. But obviously, what I want to say is that cyber, would meanwhile managed to amass so much of a know-how that we have a fairly confident degree of, dealing with that. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're there to enable business. And I'm speaking now very much exclusively as insurance industry sort of representative. But at the same time, we don't want to be naive enough, obviously, because of all this amazing scientific acumen that we carry and it's incredible actuarial talent. We're not there to be, mocking ourselves out of our own balance sheet, sort of burning it to the grounds. We're there to drive some educated decisions. We're there to enable businesses, so long as they, of course, everybody plays a part in creating awareness, in putting the necessary sort of barriers that stop any dysfunctional operations or indeed any threats coming from the outside environment. And at the same time, because the human sort of element is it's as much as a positive catalyst as it can be a negative catalyst. What I mean, obviously, to drive the capital needed, the hitting on the ESG agenda sort of conditions or indeed objectives, and continue doing business as usual, from cyber to liability and from property to, I don't know, to engineering and construction. We need to employ people. We need to educate people. People need to share the corporate values. People have to have the technical know-how to undertake the duties, the day-to-day duties. But at the same time, quite a lot of problems that we create, take again, since you mentioned cyber, any attack or any sort of, false opening the door to an attempt of phishing or whatever else might be, is ultimately accredited back to human mistake element. So again, it's the human, it's the person that takes a wrong decision without sort of filtering through their own critical thinking, their own judgment, to try and ascertain whether that's something to go forward with or not. And what I'm trying to say, obviously, that's the mutual component. What can we as employers, or indeed as recruiters, or as advisory to this do for the success and the progress? I always say the conscious evolution of the space, to educate without speaking at, to educate by including, making part, taking the various individuals and make them a part of the collective success. And it's not about sharing individual IP, it's about sharing observations, experiences, and really understanding that ultimately, as each one of us have done previously, we've gone from one company to another, we have to appreciate the fact there's a degree of recycling, there's a degree of people moving around this industry. So whether you want to really hold on your own existing employees or not, you have to take it as a fact that people are moving around. So what is best or better? To have more capable and better informed and part of the decision-making people of our industry, or really people who are kept at bay, locked in an ivory tower somewhere that says, just memorize the values for this one. Don't worry about the next one. And try again, relearn. It's not about relearning, is it? It's about collectively doing something that's going to be for the merit of everybody. Sorry, long-winded, but I felt like sharing.
Look, I mean, I think you hit on a great point there that there's some of the most advanced companies that have had very progressive HR leaders who have implemented policies around great attentiveness in listening in meetings, in the way that meetings are formatted and noted, the way that information is shared beforehand. one of the wonderful silver linings has been that not just the neurodivergent community within the employers have said, look, we hugely benefited, but everybody said we benefited from having more transparency, more structure, more ways for different voices to surface in open discussion and debate. And so these are practices which are leveling up working practices in a way which increases satisfaction for the whole workforce.
The universal design.
One small one relatively small community.
And that's the beauty of it. That's indeed the quest. This is where we want to get to. And that takes away, often enough, I'm approached by people bold enough to be honest and bold enough to trust, because there's an element of trust, and that's another value of our community. It's the trust. It's having the mutual respect and the trust in ourselves as well as in others, that we all share a mutual sort of set of objectives, a mutual set of values that are really very much anthropocentric, are there to facilitate, are there to empower and to create a degree of accountability when it comes to decision making, rather than quite often, putting our hands up and saying, this is for the pay pack above mine. It's all about utilizing our own judgment, being able to drive circumstances and decisions to the point that we know we probably need to consult with others, but we've done everything we can and we could. And in that sort of process, we're learning more things about ourselves. We're learning also things that we need to become better trained at. I suppose if we are to throw ourselves in unique ways of underwriting, or on the new products that you mentioned, on really sort of acknowledging and appreciating non-traditional entries that come into the market, the startup sort of businesses, we have to acknowledge them and spend a little bit of time in understanding the business model. It will help us identify the areas that we as individuals, as well as traditional, amazing, yet quite gigantic and slow to move organizations, need to upskill themselves in. That's quite beautiful, because it doesn't take an external sort of advisory to come in and charge an arm and a leg to educate us. It comes simply by understanding or trying to figure out and identify the different components that make up our ecosystem. And our ecosystem is constantly changing.
And I think one doesn't need to one needs to have been living under a rock last year to look at to look at the AI and generative AI hype, to say actually insurance with its very heavy manual processes and its paper-based way of working has a great opportunity to leverage this and to free up underwriters, brokers for market-facing activities, for other more economically beneficial ways of working. And we've seen that firstly, I think this the canary in the coal mine was Project Key, and then just before Christmas we saw the announcement of the joint venture between Hiscox and Google on the forward syndicate. And we know that this is being replicated elsewhere. We know that this business model is going to earn its place in the broader market. So yes, I mean, and I think one other point to make is that some of the boldest players are have been looking for a number of years beyond risk transfer and looking at other looking at the risk ecosystem in the broadest possible way. And to 2 points you made earlier, Vina, that human-centric design and humans being the source of a huge number of risks in the world, that is something that a cognitively diverse group of people sitting around the table will come up with superior solutions to those who've been steeped in the one way of doing things.
100%. Um, AI, look, your point about the risk transfer and looking beyond the risk transfer is very credible. I've always been a big advocate for those business models that are not there, very strictly speaking, rigidly looking at, and how can we come up with a new product? AI can be eased into the understanding of your workforce by optimizing the day-to-day processes. It does not have to be something that people kind of get to see, whoa, as the last sort of, result of something that perhaps resembles what I used to see Bosch 15 to 20 years ago in the black boxes in banking. We didn't know what was going on there, but we were all pretty much amazed by the outcome. Perfect. It does something until, obviously, and you mentioned that, Alex, the regulators coming onto you and saying, well, unless you can actually tell me, and unless you at the C-level can show me full understanding and ownership and accountability of the processes, there's something, fishy in there. So you should sort of change the tap. And it's the same thing. We don't want AI to be the new black box. We need AI to be something that helps people, augments the abilities of the human talent. Perhaps in my book of business, probably attenuates and showcases those talents. Really does the talking without us having to, especially some of us, not this one, some of us who don't want to talk about it as much as others. And I'd like also to mention boldness. Community of HR leaders we put together are courageous and bold. You have to be courageous and bold. You have to be out there. You have to be prepared to really accept the vulnerabilities and the things that we are all not so good at as an industry or as an organization in order to move to better days.
Look, I think the first impetus comes from self-awareness, and that intersection of self-awareness and courage, that your knowledge is not at the levels you wish it to be, that there is a sort of boldness and a desire to do something about that, and there is a desire to put yourself amongst your peers, and potentially allow people to peer behind the mask. And this I think there's a very very apt analogy, given that the neurodivergent community is very talented at masking, that its fundamental neurological processes are very different in some cases to neurotypical people. And people spend years and have a very late life diagnosis, whilst either being ADHD, having dyspraxia, dyslexia, or something else, and it's a hidden form of disability, if you wish to call it that. I mean, it's helpful for the purposes of the Equalities Act to bracket neurodiverse and divergent under disability, or if you prefer to be more positively to think as positively about it, just realize and perceive it on a spectrum of cognitive diversity, that there are people who will act and behave the way that it has always been done, and this is the way that the world operates, and that there are people like Elon Musk. He is the intersection of Asperger's and genius, of course, who wish to who have a very different vision, for better or worse, about how companies and society will operate.
Okay, I mean, look, much as I do appreciate people who hold an awful lot of respect, and I'm not really necessarily not part of them. I hold respect for all individuals, including Elon Musk. I'd rather not comment on Elon Musk, especially when it comes to AI, because for starters, I don't particularly endorse his viewpoint that AI will have the power of removing the human sort of element of from the job. But as we were speaking about, obviously, this incredible talents, I don't also believe in superpowers. I don't believe in superfoods, scientifically not proven. But I will tell you so much. I believe in plurality. I believe in people who are there to indicate different ways and methods of acknowledging things and of trying to explain phenomena, of identifying trends for the future, and indeed being there as a conduit between the values of the corporate and the needs of the society. For me, very important is to try and represent the people we're serving. And at this stage of time, we're having massive debates, government sort of, level, our private and public as well as academic domain. We're speaking about the sense of purpose, but also the sense of the duty of care we have for our clients. You mentioned it earlier, but of course we went in different sort of exploring different pathways. Very important is for us to understand also, going back to the enablement, that we're there to help the clients. If the clients, or should I say loosely, customers, don't feel adequately represented or understood in the way that they want to file a claim, to articulate the needs to us, or to feel that the needs are getting to be taken into account, then I don't think we have a plan B. I don't think we have the longevity. I don't think we have the continuity and the sustainable sort of facilitation of our business model to achieve that. So it's very important. And back onto AI, or should I say again, loosely, and perhaps very generic, as we used to sort of refer to technology as technology. So technology is there to help us in a two-way form. One is to be the assistive technology for people of neurodivergent, as in neurodevelopmental conditions, but also technology is there to really help us not having to verbalize or articulate as many things as by 2024 should be taken as granted. And I think, again, just to start closing, because I'm getting conscious of the time. We want the audience to enjoy what they do. Never do we get tiring, but of course, before we get to the tiring sort of point, stop it. I would have helped it if I was to talk less. But of course, it's very important to speak as co-producers of this community today. Is to get HR to acknowledge those needs and those challenges. Because I find that HR are neurodivergent people's first sort of place into the organization. And the more we equip HR leaders, and the more HR leaders tell us about the things that we need to know and we need to factor in as recruiters, as organizations that are there to facilitate, the more we'll be able to sort of, put that together and create something that really resonates. So final few wiser than this person's sort of words. Over to you, Alex. You can close it as you wish.
Thanks very much, Vina. It's been a fascinating discussion, and many of these points we could expand on for a great period of time. And whilst one level, this is clearly a shared passion of ours. On another level, it is worth looking for inspiration about some of the great social movements in the UK. If you think of people like William Wilberforce and the Pankhurst sisters, we know that society does not change overnight. That our goal is not for automatic transformation. We appreciate that it's going to take place one excellent conversation at a time, and one light bulb, and those light bulbs lighting up an increasingly large surface area, when all counterparties realize both the justice of being far more inclusive to neurodivergent people, but also when the penny drops, there is a very, very strong economic case too.
That's beautiful. Having the case that really sort of substantiates the social movement. And I love that. So the timing is right, everybody. We are so excited. The inaugural session for the HR Advisory Community Group will take place in March. We will be absolutely honored to have certain keynote speakers as well as a networking opportunity to put together all the HR leaders that we have currently in the HR Advisory Group together to openly speak about those challenges, to openly sort of share their own vision, their ideas, and hopefully we will be finding some nice intercepts on which we can grow stronger, bolder, and we can exercise our right to take the debate into action. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and keep your questions, feedback, commentary coming. Thank you very much.